Yo, what's good with you? Back in black with another Enlisted video. If you guys are new to the channel and you love shooting games just like me, make sure you aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. In this video, I would like to break down the most useful perk recommendations for the Assaulter Soldier class in Enlisted to make you as effective as possible on the battlefield and useful to your team as much as possible. Generally speaking, Assaulters are another frontline soldier class in Enlisted characterized by their high mobility and ability to use submachine guns and assault rifles. With that in mind, you already know this class is going to excel in close range combat, clearing indoor areas, and taking objectives. Something to keep in mind for these perk videos is that you always want to attack these perks from the standpoint of either buffing what skills make the particular soldier class more effective, and also from the standpoint of attacking whatever bad stats a weapon you have in your hands already has, or conversely accentuating whatever good stats the weapon you have in your hands already has to make it even better overall. But first and foremost, starting with the mobility or the green perk category, the first perk that I want to implore you guys to get is the movement speed while crawling or crouching. This will not only improve your recoil control overall, but also lower your hitbox profile, making you harder to hit as you strafe left and right around corners in buildings or around any other piece of cover, basically exposing yourself less. The only other perk that I highly recommend you get for the first section is going to be the speed of changing pose, because the faster you can get in and out of cover, the better, and you simply don't need the extra jump height on this class. And as far as the fire extinguishing speed perk is concerned, I would only get that if you have a singular perk point left over. Moving into the second tier of the green perks, you definitely want to be grabbing that med pack usage speed perk. If you're playing the right way and always trying to close the gap on your enemies or make your way towards the objective, I predict that your lifespan using the Assaulter class will be one of the shortest on average, and one of the main ways that you can extend that is by healing yourself faster. Taking damage is inevitable, but the faster you can get back to shooting, the longer you will stay alive. For my next recommendation, I wanted to pose a question. As an assaulter, have you ever tried to flank around a building that has windows and you start to jump through the window? You see a bunch of AI standing there unsuspectingly, aloof, only for them to auto lock onto you, turn around and shoot or stab you before you could even finish your climbing animation? Very annoying, right? Wouldn't you agree? But you don't want to stop the good idea of flanking through the side of, I guess around buildings or through windows, because that is a good idea. It's just that you want to get a perk that would actually increase the speed of that jumping climbing animation, so you can actually do what you got to do on that flank as far as taking out the enemies that are not paying attention. So that said, I would highly recommend getting maybe 1 or 2 climbing speed perks. The only reason that I say you shouldn't necessarily max it out per se is because you definitely want to be grabbing one of those run speed perks as well. But climbing speed on assaulters is definitely one of the more underrated perks, because constantly poking for new angles to actually attack from and get on the objective is something that assaulters should definitely be doing. Aim speed is irrelevant on some machine guns and assault rifles because they're designed to be nimble and fast to maneuver around with, and sprint speed, as we discussed in many videos, it just costs way too much for what it actually does when you could have a lot more universal perks that make your soldier better overall. But just in case anybody doesn't know, or maybe they forgot, you could always just buy an axe out of the the shop, and then you can run faster with that whenever you're not in the middle of a firefight, or if you participate in an event, or maybe you get one out of a loot box, you can get a sword and you can run exponentially faster with that as well. So again, it's just not really worth it in my humble opinion to ever invest in the sprint speed perk. But coming up next, we now got to move into the vitality section of the perk tree, or the red perks for anybody who prefers the colors over actually reading. As far as the first section is concerned, there's only 2 real options that I consider viable for the assaulter class in general. Basically, that's going to be the health recovered outside of combat and stamina regeneration speed. Of course, there's only 1 slot available for the stamina regen, so you don't necessarily have to have any reservations about grabbing one of those because there's only 1 available to grab. But as far as the health recovered outside of combat is concerned, as an assaulter, I do feel the times that you're technically outside of combat is very minimal, so I wouldn't necessarily say that I would max that out either. Just enough to get yourself access to the tier 2 red perks, which will be a lot more useful by comparison, and the one that you'll want to max out. In regard to the perk that gives you less head shaking and faster concussion recovery overall, I do find that to be a little irrelevant on SMGs and assault rifles, because if you're fighting at the proper range, even if you do get your head shaken by some artillery or like a plain bomb or something of that nature, it shouldn't really affect your aim overall, because basically all you got to do is you just got to center the target. And subsequently, the same thing can be said about holding your breath. I don't know why people would really want to be doing that often with their submachine gun, and as such, there's not really a reason to warrant spending an entire perk point on it when you could put it somewhere else that's way more useful. Getting into the tier 2 vitality red perks, first and foremost, I would advise spending all your perk points on the increased base stamina. Reason being, this is one of the soldier classes where you'll be sprinting pretty much all of the time as you make your way towards the objective, climbing through windows and over ledges, and maybe sometimes even swimming to close the gap on your foes. And even when you finally get there, you'll still want some stamina left over to keep your aim as steady as possible, so the more the merrier basically. I'm sure a lot of you could guess, but the next perk is going to be the health recovered from each med pack use. I honestly don't think there's a reason to not grab this perk if you have faster bandaging speed, because they're simply just so synergistic together in increasing your overall lifespan, and you'd basically be doing yourself a disservice not to have these two perks in combination. Unlike Call of Duty, reducing your flinch isn't as much of a crutch perk by nature. You're never going to get flinched off your target in close range. Also, is something that I would consider basically with low caliber weapons as well if you're going against other submachine gun users. And if you do get hit by a high caliber weapon, you're either going to go down or you're going to die outright. So I would say basically increasing your stability on your firearms when hit is something that basically doesn't matter at all. And I do say this often, but as far as the last tier vitality perks is concerned, just also increasing your vitality with that perk at the bottom is just one of those things that just costs too much for what it does, when you could get other things like increasing your health regain from a med pack and stamina and stuff like that, just to make your soldier more universal of a threat, if that makes any sense. And of course, coming up last, we now got to take a look at the weapon or yellow perk category, and this one does have a little bit of variability in the first tier as far as what you can choose. But me personally, the only perk that I can say that I genuinely care for is the decreasing my shot deviation after quickly turning with my weapon, which is something that I can say will be happening very often at close range with your SMGs, and even at medium range with your assault rifles. You could probably say that you will be quick turning often to adjust to your targets. And basically, I'm sure some of you would say that that's a wasted perk at absolute close range, and I would agree with that statement, but as your targets move further and further from you, decreasing your shot deviation is something that just will make your weapon more reliable overall. So I think it's something that you should always max out, even on this subclass of weapons. I'd be remiss not to mention that when you look at the other tier 1 combat perks by comparison, none of them will really matter as much as far as overall usefulness, because as far as switching weapons faster, that's something that you should really only use if you run overkill on your assaults or soldiers. And me personally, I do not. I'm more so of a large ammo bag kind of guy. And then as far as like, you know, increasing the throwing range of your grenades, that's something that is just really not a useful perk. And if you use it on one soldier, you're basically going to have to use it on all of them in order to get used to it. And as a sidebar, something that I would say or add just to make that perk actually good or worth picking, if we could get like maybe some kind of throwing trajectory line or something, just so we can know where our grenades are going to land at if we actually do choose this perk, that would actually increase the viability immensely. So that's something that I wanted to throw out there to any developers that watch this video. Highly would consider that. But yeah, the only other perk in the first tier for combat is going to be increasing your melee speed, and considering that you already have a weapon that excels in close to medium range anyways, I don't find too much value in that perk, unless maybe you're running the Japan faction. You know, they put bayonets on all their weapons, so maybe you could get some utility out of that. But using the butt of your weapon when you already have something that excels in close range, you're probably better off just trying to get that reload in there, in my humble opinion, which will bring me into the next tier of perks, which we will talk about right now. So, moving into the tier 2 yellow or combat perks, the most important thing you want to do is max out your vertical recoil control. Typically, higher rate of fire SMGs and assault rifles are some of the more recoil intensive weapons in the game, so you want to bring that down as much as possible to stay on target and increase your overall effective firing range. If you can afford it after prioritizing the recoil, then a reload speed perk is also good to throw in there to decrease your downtime and increase your kill streak longevity. The last perk that I wanted to recommend that has great great synergy with the bandaging speed and health regain from the previous green and red perks is the greater chance of going into a down state. As we previously discussed, the chance of taking damage with the assaulter class or dying in general is very high in comparison to I guess any other soldier class when using assaulters, just by the nature of their playstyle and the intended use. So this perk is actually a great way to cap off the synergy of increasing your overall lifespan. It will still pay great dividends to get good at switching between your soldiers and retaliating quickly while the other guy that just got shot is still down and healing, but you should get more use out of them overall. And of course, as I previously also said in my other videos, the horizontal recoil control is just way too expensive for what it does when you can have all of these other perks by comparison. So I mean, you know, do what you want, but again, these are just my best perk recommendations. But yeah, man, that pretty much takes care of how I would go about setting up my assaulter perks. Generally speaking, I try to set them up in a way that allows me to run really fast and run for a really long time throughout the map so I can get really good flanks on my opponents. I try to make them heal really fast and heal really good and have a greater chance of surviving a fatal shot, and I lower their recoil as much as I can while slightly boosting the reload speed so I can get more damage output overall. Hopefully that helps you get better at the game, and yeah, if it does, let me know down there in the comment section. I am also hoping you guys enjoyed the gameplay and learned something useful, and if you did, don't forget to aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. Hope you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. And yeah, hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Black Guy out.